Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to be here. And I also just want to briefly say that I've been coming to Estonia since the beginning of the 1990s. And indeed, during your independence, the country has changed. And coming from Finland, I can see it that less and less Finnish is spoken by the Estonians these days. So it has become more English and more other languages, which in a way is good and fair enough. And I also remember from the 1970s and 80s, the Estonians, especially here in the northern part of the country, were eagerly watching the Finnish television. And we had very fancy commercial at that time, at least, seen from the Estonian perspective. And many Estonians thought they were just lies, that it's not possible that there is such a plethora of things in that country, so rich, everything appeared. But now you are catching up very well here in Estonia. It's always a great pleasure to come here, and I really admire what you have achieved during your independence, and I hope you will keep up the good work you have had until now. And every time I come to Estonia, even if it's just 80 kilometers away, coming from Helsinki, I feel that I'm traveling much further away. We don't have such a lovely old town as you do here in Tallinn, and that makes me feel that I'm somewhere in Central Europe or somewhere further away. So it's a great pleasure to be here. My topic is about multicultural guidance and counselling. How many of you have a linkage to guidance and counselling through your work? Some of you do. So then you will easily understand what I'm trying to communicate here. I'm sorry, the title is not very elegant, it's complex, but I try to cover all those items in one way or another. Just to mention that in Finland we are discussing that migration should not be a policy field of its own. It should be much more integrated into education and training, into labor market policies, into social and health care, because it is something transversal. All those other fields are extremely critical that they function well when we receive people from other countries, whether they are refugees or whether they are just migrant families coming to Finland and settling down there. And also you see the name of a European network called gyroguidance. I'm representing not only my home base, the Finnish National Agency for Education, but also the gyroguidance network here. It's a Europe-wide network promoting international mobility, but also promoting the international dimension or European dimension in guidance and counselling provision. I will briefly touch upon that. And realizing that time is running. So where I work and what I do, so we are trying to promote the internationalization of education, training, working life and life guidance in Finland. And this is happening across Europe. But also we have to follow up what's happening on the policy level. I mean, everything starts at the European level, what the European Commission decides together with the member states, of course. We have to follow what's happening in the academic field, what kind of research results there are influencing these internationalization processes, and knowing what is happening in the guidance practice, what kind of methods and techniques are being used, what kind of innovation is taking place there, and then also making sure that the guidance practitioners working in the education, employment and youth sectors, that they have the abilities, the skills and knowledge to provide good, high-quality guidance to their clients. This is reflecting the refugee crisis that we experienced 2 years ago here in Europe. Indeed, we haven't made that experience ourselves, so we will never, ever understand what those people have gone through. And this is, of course, a tremendous challenge to the service providers, whether it's education, employment, guidance and counselling, whatever, how to go into the other person's shoes, trying to understand what the person has experienced. This is a mission impossible, I would say. But also, what I was really sad and shocked to notice 2 years ago, across Europe actually, was how unprepared many countries were to receiving these refugees from Syria, from Iraq and other countries, we tend to think that we have a system for everything. Don't you agree? That there is a system for this and that. And all of a sudden, even if we thought the system was there, we couldn't fully deal with or cope with this refugee crisis. But it was a lesson learned, and we have to go on with that. This is the European Union definition of lifelong guidance. It's already, I'm not saying it's obsolete, but it's not fully reflecting the most recent developments. I would, for example, add that guidance and counselling services are provided based on a multi-channeling approach, meaning that we have the traditional face-to-face services, but on top of that, we have the digital services or digitalized services. But all in all, we believe that guidance and counselling can be the bridge, and guidance counsellors can be the bridge makers for people coming from other countries to our countries and help them find a way through learning into the society. And of course, when we run training courses for guidance practitioners about multicultural issues or international aspects of their work, then we often hear that when they encounter somebody from another country, that of course they are curious to know where this person comes from. This is human interest, and this is good. It's a good opening line, definitely. But at the same time, it may lead into stereotyping that once you know that this person is from country X, then you start repeating in your mind what you have learned about that country, and that's a risky business, that you start making generalizations, you start stereotyping. Instead, we should ask, who are you today? Because we are changing on a daily basis. We don't notice it, but we should be aware of that fact. And also our clients are changing on a daily basis. I refer to what Mr. Bennett earlier said, that stereotypes, they are around, they are in our minds. I don't know if you have seen these maps. I have 3 maps here. I'm not going to speak a lot about them, but just mentioning that there is this young Slovak guy, Martin Varčič, who has created wonderful maps about stereotypes. And I hope nobody gets offended. That's not the intention here. But simply, the further away you go from your own home country, usually the less you know about the other country or culture. And then you start relying on media, what you can learn from there, or your friends or family members, what they have told about those countries to you when they have visited them for longer or shorter periods. But anyway, so we are influenced, our mind, our rational mind, whatever it is constantly influenced by information, and we have to be very alert that we sort of understand what's real, how it's influencing us, and what we can do with that information. Okay, the further away we go, here is India, China, some Asian countries. So at least for myself, only this year I was in South Korea for an international conference. Before that I hadn't been to Asia. Of course, I had met Asian people and so on, but I had very limited knowledge about that region, those countries, and how they are special. So, of course, I felt really stupid on many occasions and trying to understand how this society is functioning, how people are ticking, and so on. And then the United States. Here in Europe, we are 46 or 47 countries that belong to Europe, and then 28 that belong to the European Union. How many of you can list all the 50 US states? I cannot do that. You can. Okay, excellent. And somebody else. Okay, very good, very good. But also, when we talk about the United States of America, we think it's all the same, but this is not true. So also, that way we are influenced, our brain is influenced, and the way we speak and talk about things. But when working with migrants, whether they are migrants coming for work and learning, for studying in our countries, or whether they are refugees or asylum seekers. So the guidance practitioners often say, I think I should know much more about all the countries and cultures from where I have clients. And then we just say that that's a mission impossible. You cannot possibly know everything about everything. So what you should do, or how you should approach this issue, is that you should rather understand what is the impact of our culture or social environment and how it influences our thinking, our approach to life, worldview, ideals, etc., etc. That's very helpful. And through that you can find a connection point with the other person, I believe. But it's not easy. Guidance practitioners, they are highly devoted to their work, they want to perform well, and they feel that they need something substantial which they are not easily given, but I think it's not correct to think that they should know everything about every single country or culture. This is mission impossible. And rather we emphasize the individual aspect, that people are all different. Okay, briefly about identity. I know there are very experienced researchers and people here knowing a lot about identity and identifications. So what we also say to guidance practitioners when we run training courses is that, remember, identity, if there is such a thing, is something which is not stable, it's not something permanent, rather it's a fluid thing, a liquid thing, constantly evolving and changing, slowly. And maybe there is this core essence, as Stets and Burke from year 2000 say, that there is this identity being, something that is there, maybe always, but then identity doing, how we relate to the world around us and other people, how that influences us and how we perform. And Mr. Bennett was also using the term co-creation, or to co-create. It's through interaction we co-create the world. We can learn from each other and then we can adapt to the changing circumstances. Okay, that's all I say about that. And then a little bit back to the competencies, skills and competencies of guidance practitioners. And also this model could be applied to the clients of guidance practitioners. This is a simplification about intellectual capital. There is much more to this. But yes, the human capital, as we know, it's about skills and competencies, the abilities that we have developed through learning, through working. Social capital is then sort of the platform, all the relationships and connections, the networks that we have, through which we interact with other people and we make things happen. And then whether it's an institution, organization, a private sector company or public sector institution, or a non-governmental third sector association or something else, there are certain structures, processes, etc., that we have to follow and respect. And of course, if we so wish, we can try to influence them as well so that they become better. So this takes us to the concept of career capital, which is reflecting back to what I said on about the previous slide. So there is a new categorization, knowing why, knowing how, and knowing whom, which finds some connection to human capital, social capital, eventually organizational capital. And this is also something that the guidance practitioners should explore a little bit more when they think that they don't have the abilities to work with people coming from other countries. They feel they lack something. Okay, what they lack, then of course they should try to find a solution to that. But let me see, I lost the thought now, speaking too fast and making hard work to the interpreters. Apologies. But simply, the guidance practitioners or teachers, trainers, whoever, could use this model for themselves. But also, this could be a helpful tool when they work with their clients. Especially in the European Union countries, as you well may know, we strongly are in favor of lifelong learning and skills development, career management, and things like that. So this is a very strong message that the guidance practitioners should give to their clients, that understand that when you are in our countries, here the employers really expect to find good people, hardworking people with proper qualifications, and of course, as we sadly know, people coming from other countries, if they are refugees, they have left everything behind. They might have left their diplomas and other certificates behind, and there is no way to get them back. So also validation of their prior learning and skills they have when they arrive is a very critical thing to be taken care of. What I'm very happy about today's event, this is just one aspect. I mean, the word diversity or the concept of diversity has been frequently used. I like it a lot because it really shows that, yes, we are all diverse. I mean, even all Estonians or all Finns, we are diverse, we are different from one another, and this is something we should acknowledge. Not thinking that you have to come from the other part of the world, have a different skin color, that only those things would make you different. No. So I would really challenge or contest the concept of multiculturalism. Like Mr. Bennett also pointed out, that when we start speaking about different cultures, then we create separation, we create division and fragmentation. So diversity, try to see how we are similar and building upon those similarities. That's the key in all interaction. And individuality definitely is something we have to emphasize even more. Of course, it requires a lot of resources from the service providers if we start providing tailor-made services. It costs a lot, but living in this bloody complex world that we have created means that people have different needs, and therefore guidance practitioners should then be able to cope with all kinds of needs and aspirations and interests that people may have, and therefore this more individualized approach. And then we often hear even the national authorities or regional local authorities say, we have to integrate them. And this for me is a power issue, that we, top down, we integrate you. And I don't think this is really the correct way of expressing the thing. Rather, we should really support the integration process of those people who have arrived to our countries. And there are, of course, various ways of doing that. And guidance and counselling, as I see it and many other people see it, is a good way to help and support this integration process. And in case you would need anything from me or from Finland, here are my contact details. In case you are on Twitter or LinkedIn, you can find me there. Simply insert my first name and family name and you'll find me there, in case you would like to get connected on LinkedIn, for example. So an open invitation. And now 1 more minute. So obviously if there is a question or quick comment, we could take that, or if...
Actually, let's wait till the panel.
Okay.
For the questions.
Yep.
If you don't mind. So, ladies and gentlemen, Mika.
Yeah, thank you.